Hello, and welcome to this episode of Women in Engineering, Success Stories from STEM Professionals. In this episode, I will be talking with Karine Leblanc, Vice President of Sales of iAIRE LLC, and a renowned speaker, trainer, coach, and author about the critical role of emotional intelligence, EQ, in engineering, and why it matters. Karine will also provide practical strategies and tips for engineers to help enhance their EQ. I am your host, Tiffany Teachy, a senior mechanical engineer, STEM advocate, TEDx International speaker, and an internationally recognized author of children's books, including What Can I Be? STEM Careers from A to Z, and the STEM Crew Kids Adventure series. I also host the Read It Right radio show on WDRB Media, an owner and Thrive Edge Publishing and owner and publishing consultant of Inspired Authors Publishing. And with that, let's jump right into today's episode. I'm so excited today to be able to have our guest. So now let's just jump right into the main segment of our episode. Today I have with me Karine Leblanc. Welcome, Karine, to the Women in Engineering podcast.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I am super excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. All right, Karine, could you start by telling us about your journey from graduating with a mechanical engineering degree to becoming the VP of sales in iAIRE and an acclaimed speaker and author?
Well, let's start right in, right? So the engineering side, so the fun part. Basically, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because my dad was an HVAC teacher. So I saw him at home, I heard him, and I would go to visit him at school, and decided to go into mechanical engineering. My specialty is HVAC, so anything that has to do with air conditioning, heating, ventilating. And then after working in HVAC or as an engineer for, basically since school, I got interested into the soft skills or the human skills of the engineering. And this came maybe in 2019, approximately, that I started doing something on the side. And basically, this is how I went from there to that. And then after doing the human skills, I decided that I wanted to talk to the world about it. And it's very hard to impact a lot of people just by speaking. So I decided, why not write a book? So I can leave a legacy and I can impact more people. So I decided to write a book, and I'm speaking, I'm writing books. I wrote a book, and that's pretty much it. This is how I went from a mechanical engineer to a writer and a speaker, I guess.
Yes, I love it. And shout out to all the mechanical engineers, because I'm a mechanical engineer as well. And so we have some similarities. So kudos to you. I'm a speaker and an author. So it's something in us that we were able to take that, side of the brain and then turn it into the other side of the brain to be able to be creative and be able to be, from that end. So thank you for sharing your journey. What's the name of your book? Talk to us about being an author, the name of your book.
The name of my book is How to Be Human in a Technical World. Because it doesn't really matter how technical you are if nobody wants to work with you. So I went through my own transformation journey, and a young engineer, when I started as a young engineer, I was struggling a little bit working in a male-dominated industry. It was, those kind of incident that you are at a meeting and you mention an idea or you have an opinion, and then nobody kind of listen or acknowledge you. And suddenly the same exact idea is mentioned by a colleague, which happened to be a man. And suddenly everybody's like, oh my God, what a great idea. Let's go with that. And then I'm like, wait a second.
Just said it.
I mentioned that 10 minutes ago. Nobody thought it was a good idea. And suddenly it is. So all of these, not only with me, I started with my friends. So I decided to change, to become a little bit stronger. I wanted to be part of the club, be with the men, and I became a little bit more tough, more aggressive. My emotional intelligence was not very good, let's just say it. I
Okay.
was reacting more than I was like responding.
Good.
So this is
Yes. Well,
why I decided to write my book. Basically, I to talk
I
about my
love it.
story.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for telling your journey and telling us why you decided to write that book. And as you mentioned, emotional, intelligence in that standpoint, could you explain the concept of EQ to our listeners and why it's gained attention in the engineering field?
Yeah, absolutely. So why is well, EQ is pretty easy. The way I would explain it to a 12-year-old is EQ or emotional intelligence or EI is the way you show up. It's your behavior. And a lot of people think that emotional intelligence is always about being nice, right? Oh, it's about being nice. Oh, Karine. And I'm like, no, it's not about being nice, but it's about knowing when emotions show up and what to do with them. Because we're human, right? It doesn't matter if I teach about emotional intelligence, if I wrote a book about emotional intelligence, I still have my days, right? Like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what emotional intelligence is. It's basically understanding and managing the emotions within you and within your relationship with others.
Now, when you say that, we're going to talk about that technical abilities. And so let's go into why is emotional intelligence, it's about critical skills for engineers and who traditionally focuses more on technical abilities. So why would this be important for, the critical skills for engineers when it comes to emotional intelligence?
Oh, wow. Engineers, we have such an important role in this world. We save lives. And I'm actually thinking back to when I became an engineer at our ceremony in Montreal. They were talking to us about the bridge in Quebec who fell twice, not only once, but twice. And 80-something people, died because of that. And it's just to remind us that we have a very critical job and it's very, very important. And we're so focused about that, right? We're so focused about the numbers, about the math, about making it work, that sometimes we forget that we work with humans. Mm-hmm. And engineers, we work in teams, right? I'm in the HVAC world, so I'm in doing the mechanical part, but I need to talk to the plumbing. I need to talk to the structural engineer. I need to talk to the architect. I need to talk to the electrical engineer. I cannot do a building with only the HVAC, right? What about the rest? Well, I can have all the technicality and I can be super smart, but if I don't know how to work in a team, that's hard. Then sometimes the collaboration is not there, the communication is not there, and the relationship was not there. And then you start making mistakes and you start having conflict and miscommunication. And this is why it's so important. Engineers, we have a very important role, and we need to understand that it's not only on the technical side, it's also on the human side. You need both. You cannot just have one.
That's it. And that's the part where the human side is important. And I love how you shared that the impact it's going to make. That, and I think that's really a lot of times why we have to keep that in mind as far as the safety side of things. It's involving people. And so you got to think of that side of things too, the impact that it's making, because we are changing the world and everything. So I love how you tie that in. It's not just the technical side of things. And so thank you for sharing that. Now let's go into just talking about you and your transformation. Can you talk about how your own transformation through emotional intelligence has influenced your professional life and your approach to engineering and leadership?
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit, right? When I started working, this is how it happened. And one day I had lunch with my mentor, Tiffany, and mentors are very important. Have you ever had a mentor, Tiffany?
Yes.
Yeah. You still have?
It's always important. Mentors and sponsors, yes. I always have a mentor trying to make sure yes, it's important.
Yes,
talk about it.
Yeah. So I had two mentors. I had one that I was very, very, very close. And he will mention sometime, hey, Karine, you're kind of rough on the edges, right? It's like customers are not necessarily very excited to call you anymore. They kind of call your teammate. And I'm like, what are you talking about, right? And because we're so close. But then I had another mentor that I would not see as often. His name is Mike. And we went to eat, and he asked me, just after we sat, it's like, hey, Karine, so what's going on with you? Well, I'm like, nothing wrong. Why? And he's like, well, what? You're always mad. And I realized I was like, I'm not always mad. And I looked at him like, what are you talking about? But when he said that, wow, it had such a profound impact on me. It's like almost like I had a light bulb moment. I saw myself and I realized at that moment, wow, he's right. Because he said, when you joined us and when I first met you, you were so bubbly and fun and loving and laughing. And now, exactly, now it's like you're always mad. And so this is when I started changing. And this is where I started reading. And I remember the first time I went to Google, I'm like, what to do when you're in a bad mood or you're mean. And I was like, I was trying to find out. I even didn't know emotional intelligence even existed, right? And I found out about it. And then I started to educate myself. I read, did some assessment, and I started also putting into action everything that I was learning. And I also shared it with my team. I shared that I was working on my emotional intelligence. And believe me, they were happy because they were working with that girl, right? And so I started changing. And after I started changing, then I was like, oh my God, it's everywhere. It's everywhere around me. I need to help out our industry. And everything happened this way. So that was my own transformation. I call it the Karine version 1 and the Karine version 2.
Yes. That's amazing. I mean, that's the awareness and just having, at least you had two people that were honest with you, those mentors that are advising you and giving you that truth and putting you, allowing you to see the different perspective. And I think that's important as we're growing and going through, the journey itself. So kudos to them for being honest with you, and then you bringing and, taking responsibility, accountability for it and reading up on it. And now you're passing it on for others. So I love how you're doing that. Now talk about strategies. What strategies would you recommend for engineers looking to enhance their emotional intelligence?
Strategies. First of all, self-awareness, right? So if you're not aware, you don't know there's something wrong or something going on, so you cannot do the work. So number one is self-awareness. So take a hard look in the mirror. And, sometimes you're nice at work and you come back home and then now it's your family. So you're not so nice anymore because it's your family. So that's another very important part of ourself, right? The fact that the moodiness or the inconsistency, right? So very, very important. Some strategies, take a hard look. Look at your values, what kind of personality you are. Look at your limiting beliefs, your self-esteem. All of these, this is a very good first step. And taking feedback well, because if I didn't take feedback well from my mentor, I would have never changed. I would have looked at him like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? And life would have keep going. So taking feedback is very, very important. Knowing what and who pushes your button, right? So if I don't like everybody because not everybody like me, it's normal. But knowing when you have to work on a project that maybe you don't get along with that specific person, well, instead of being snappy or having an attitude, just know that they are going to be there and you're going to have to work with them for the duration of the project. If it's 4 months, it's 4 months. If it's a year, it's a year. But talk to yourself. Okay, I'm going to have to deal with that person. Maybe let me see if my colleague can help out or how I can make it work. But again, it's self-awareness. So this is just like a couple tip little strategies that you can use like every day that can make a difference. And also look at how you're physical, right? Like, are you starting to feel like your shoulder is going this way, like super high, or your heartbeat is going and you're like, I feel something is going on right now. Like the emotions are taking over and you want to be in control. You don't want the emotion to control you. You want to be in control. So when this happens, usually I notice myself, I'm like, okay, I need to relax here. I need to breathe. So the breathing is also a very important part, a strategy that I use a lot. Just breathe, take a walk, count to 10. These are like couple strategies. I have a whole book, Tiffany, but if that's...
Oh, yeah, don't give it all away. That is great. Yeah, don't give all your good nuggets and gems that you are sharing. If it's in your book, just give them a little teaser. So that's good. Thank you,
If it's
Karine.
enough,
Yes,
it's not enough. Otherwise, I can keep going.
Yeah, no. Get her book. Get her book. If you want more of those strategies, I love it. So talk about teams. You talk about working with teams, How can engineering teams better understand and cultivate a positive emotional culture in their workplaces? I think that is key.
How they can cultivate it. So let me ask you, Tiffany, if I ask you, do you remember the best boss you ever had?
I do. Yes.
And if I ask you the worst person or the worst boss you ever had, did you ever had the bad boss?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
So when you think about these two person, okay, how they made you feel, right? Like, let's just think about that best boss because I'm a positive person. And you think about that person and you're like, oh my God, they made me feel so good, right? I felt acknowledged, I felt supported, I felt like, I felt courageous, I felt elevated. So all those positive, and then I bet you wanted to work even harder for that person and you were even more engaged. Right. Am I correct to think that?
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So this is critical because at work, when you deal with all those supervisors and our managers and the studio leaders, and it's not always like just a CEO and CFO and CTO, right? There are so many layers of supervisors and managers. All of these people all have an impact on so many team members. So if they were the good boss, then they affect how people feel. Because when you have that person coming in and they are just snappy or aggressive and they're not nice, then you don't feel good. And if you don't feel good, I'm not engaged. I'm going to do the bare minimum, right? And if I finish at 5, at 5:01, I'm out the door, or don't talk to me after that. And the opposite is very true, right? You come in and the person come in the room and suddenly, woo, everybody is happy because that person came in the room and you have a meeting with that person. I bet you're like that, Tiffany, because when I came to the podcast, I could feel your energy and you're like, oh, I want to do a podcast with her. Look at that. Like, I have good energy.
I love it.
I like the smile. And then I'm more engaged, right? And I want to participate with you. I want to follow you. So this is a very critical. So in the culture, one way that I do to really find out, because it's very hard, right? You cannot just go to work and say, so Tiffany, how do you feel? Are you anxious? Are you stressed? It's going to be very hard for you to tell me. But I'm a Janus certified emotional intelligence practitioner. And we have a free tool, and it's a powerful tool. That tool is actually 100% anonymous. And you can send it to your team of 5, team of 10, team of 100, doesn't matter. And then we ask the person, the employee, the participant to actually rate how they feel. We have like about 10 emotions. And we ask them, so how do you feel at work regarding stress, like the emotion of stress? And then we ask them, how do you think it would be fair to rate it? And then what would be the ideal? And then when we get the results, we can see if there's gaps. And then you can see, wow, I thought everybody was happy, but it looks like my team is more stressed than I thought, or they don't feel valued. Oh, I didn't know that. So now what can I do? What are the steps that I can do? But at least it's an awareness, right? It just tells you. So that's a very good one to use for the emotional culture in the work. So if your listeners are interested, we can put it in a show note or whatever it is. They can contact me, but this is very, very powerful.
Wow. I love it. I mean, you've got so many tools and nuggets. I mean, I love it. I mean, yes. So definitely want you to make sure you share that. That's some great tools because it's needed. I think that's that awareness piece, but if there's some tools that can help guide it, I think that's important too, as far as teams. Now let's talk about, how should leaders go about assessing the emotional well-being of their team? And you might have did it with that tool that you're talking about, but could you elaborate any more with that as well?
Basically, it's all about social awareness. So we talk a lot about self-awareness. You want to know how you are, right? But what about everybody else? Okay. I had an engineer that came after I did a presentation in Toronto in Canada, and he came after and he's like, "Hey, Karine, I know how I am. I'm pretty aware, but I don't really care about the others. I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. I just want to do my stuff, and I don't care about the others." And I told him, I said, well, that's a problem, right? Or it may be something you can work on. And if you don't know and you don't understand how everybody's feeling and how they're doing, then how can you work in team? How can you collaborate? How can you communicate? How can you create those relationships? It's so important, especially if you're working in sales and you have customers, because the customers are going to go back to the engineer that make them feel good, right? Maya Angelou said it. It doesn't. People may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So it's like you make me feel good. So I'm going to remember that day today, right? Like that podcast episode. But so this is very, very important. The emotions has way bigger impact. The EQ has way more impact than the IQ. So it's important to be socially aware. And you can do that by recognizing people at your office. Okay, it's very, very important. Recognition is a huge deal. I forget the numbers, but the more recognized the employees are, the more engaged they're going to be, because they feel acknowledged. They feel like they care. So it makes a huge difference. Having like an open door policy, my previous job, the CEO always has an open door policy. So I would go and I didn't have to be important. I didn't have to make an appointment. I didn't have to have something critical to talk to him. I would just go and the door would be open and I would just knock and say, "Hey, John, are you available?" And yes or no. And that's wonderful. The guy is a multimillionaire. He has he's busy. He has so many things to do. But the fact that I knew I could just walk in the hallway, go say hi and ask him if I need something, it made me feel amazing. And guess what?
Right.
I would work even harder after that. So that's another tip. So he was aware, right? He was really socially aware that I was there and I existed.
That's good. And then you said it's the EQ versus the IQ. So definitely love how you tapped into that, because, I mean, that is important. You can be smart and all, but you still got to be able to communicate and be able to, yes. So that's important. I teach that with a lot with the kids and stuff too. I have the math and science, but they got to have that English and communication side of things too to be able to communicate. And so I love how you shared that topic especially with the engineer who said, "I don't need to deal with them." He's like, "No, that's not good."
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So as we close out, we're trying to, get some advice. So what piece of advice would you give to engineers who want to enhance their careers and personal growth?
The first thing is I would want to ask those engineers, how are they living right now? Are they comfortable? They just like wake up, go to work, go to the gym, eat, and go to watch Netflix? Or they are pushing themselves. They're getting out of their comfort zone. Because if you're not getting out of your comfort zone, that means you're not growing. So just look at how you are right now. Okay? Nothing wrong with just working, right, and doing your life. But if you really want to grow, if you want to reach your full potential, then you got to do something. And my own way of doing it is like, okay, Karine, how am I feeling right now? Oh, I'm way too comfortable. That means that I'm not pushing it enough, right? So I think of it as like a rubber band, right? A rubber band, it doesn't have any use if it's not stretched. Well, it's the same thing for us. You need to stretch yourself so you can actually grow yourself. And just like a rubber band, if you stretch it too much, then you can break, right? So I would really recommend to your listeners, to those engineers, if you want to grow yourself, you need to push, you need to think outside the box, you need to read, and be careful, because I have some friends are like, "Oh yeah, I read 10 books this year. I'm so proud." And I'm like, "Okay, so what did you apply? What did you learn?" "Oh, don't remember," right? Well, what's the point, right? So it's like, I always ask them, "Do you think that knowledge is power?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, Karine, knowledge is power." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's useless if you don't take action." Therefore, you really need to apply at least one little nugget from that book on that or that podcast, right? They may be listening to your podcast, Tiffany, and being like, hey, I just learned this today. I'm going to try to remember to take feedback well. Okay, that's it. That's one little thing. Apply it. Then you're growing because you're getting outside of your comfort zone. It's not easy. And when you feel that you're going back to your comfort zone, then, that's a sign. Get out again and try to push. We have one life to live, Tiffany. We should go and live to the fullest. What do you think?
I agree. My motto is I'm living my life like it's golden. So yes, I'm all about living my life to the fullest. So Karine, it's been a pleasure. You're amazing. I'm so glad I had the opportunity. You have been dropping so many gems and nuggets. I hope the listeners have been taking notes and everything. I mean, the whole rubber band analogy with if you just leave it there, it's not going to do anything, but you got to be able to stretch it. And if you stretch it too much, then it's going to, break. And so man, you're amazing. So
you are amazing.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you. So Karine, how can people get in touch with you? I mean, you share so many tools and everything that you have. Can you just, tell our listeners how can people get in touch with you further?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. So I have my own website, right? KarineLeblanc.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is very easy. You can just communicate with me through there. And if you go to my website, I have my LinkedIn actually there. I have all the social media if you want to reach out. And also at my work, right? So at iAIRE, I can be reached there as well. So I think I'm everywhere. If you type my name, you should find a way. And I pride myself at answering emails and answering texts. So it's very, very important for me because it's all about communication. So again, right? It's I want to walk the talk. So if you reach out, I will help out. And my book is available on Amazon. And I also did an Audible. So if you're the kind of person who prefer to walk and listen, you can. However, you have to know that I recorded it myself. So the accent is very strong. So you may not understand every word. Even me, I don't understand every word. But it's still very good.
That's good. It's authentic as far as being able to have being able to write it and then hear from the one who wrote it. So that's powerful. So that's amazing that you wrote your Audible as well as having your book. So keep being who you are. You are making an impact, Karine. It's been a pleasure having you as a guest. So thank you so much for being a great guest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss our upcoming episodes featuring interviews with inspired women engineers, discussions about industry trends, and much more. Go to womeninengineeringpodcast.com, where you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, may your engineering endeavors be as remarkable as the women whose stories we're sharing. Stay curious, keep innovating, and engineer a better future.